Welcome, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you today. Nearly the end of April, which is bizarre, and almost the dark moon, the new moon for this month, which is great. Feels appropriate. That was actually not intentional, which is unusual for me, but serendipitous. You're welcome to be on or off camera, and please be muted. While we go through class today, there will be opportunities to come off mute and ask questions and share. But for the most part, I'd like us to stay muted just for background noise. And if you need anything, type it into the chat. If it's urgent, do the little virtual raise hand, because sometimes I don't look at the chat. I'm pretty good at ignoring it, actually. So if you don't know me, I'm Stacy Ramsauer. I think most of you know me, at least virtually. And Nika, I'm so glad you made it. Hi. We're here for a few reasons. If you know me, you know I'm a somatic practitioner, and I work primarily with women around the experiences of grief and rage, and those specific to motherhood. I'm a mother, and that work was really birthed from my own experience of real darkness in becoming a mother of two. And also, those experiences have been companions of mine for most of my life, and learning how to not only deal with them, but really do something much, much deeper of embrace them and harness the energy of them and digest them and utilize that energy to do something creative and transformational has been maybe the greatest pleasure of my whole life. And it gives me tremendous pleasure and purpose to hold space for women of embracing the complexity and the contradictions that we are, to enable a more honest expression of ourselves and courageous being in this world. And I think we are certainly in a chaotic time that's calling on a lot of focus and courage. And this is all I know to do. This work is all I know to do. So this is an offering that I'm making in service of human beings everywhere who are being violated and dominated and restricted, and all the other inhumane experiences that we're bearing witness to. So if that resonates for you, you're in the right place. If that's not quite why you're here, we're going to do some movement and breath work and expressive arts practices today. So something for everybody. But I think it's nice to experientially hold the tension between both sort of a confrontation with and reckoning with these complex emotions and our creative life force, the pleasure that it is to move and scream and connect with other women. I think our well-being hinges on our ability to hold those complexities at the same time. So that's what we're going to practice doing here today. I won't talk for too much longer in sort of this introductory fashion. We're going to dive right in. But I do want to say I'm going to go for up to the hour. I'm in Pacific time, so we'll stop at 11 a.m. and then I'll stay on for about 15 minutes or as long as people want to do question and answer and maybe speak to your specific experience if that feels helpful. Okay. So I'll take a round of breath. I'm real amped up. I always get really buzzy before I teach, so I just slow myself down a little here. If you would, if your eyes are on the camera, I'd invite you to move your eyes away from the screen. And if you are a person who pays attention by leaning forward and giving all of yourself to the person speaking, I invite you to lean back and pull your energy back to your own body. Whatever is supporting your physical body, see if you can give over to that support even 10% more. And notice what that's like to open yourself up to being supported even 10% more. You might stay with your eyes closed or soft, coming into a deeper awareness of your physical body, almost mapping its shape, circumference, length, with sensation and imagination. If you're feeling a little restless today, or it's a little too much to be inside, take your eyes to where the ceiling meets your wall and trace that line or that perimeter slowly with your eyes all the way around, letting your neck stretch and move as much as is comfortable, and obviously rotate your body when your neck meets its limit. And through this practice called orientation, we're feeding the nervous system information of the fact of structure, the fact of relative safety in this present moment, which doesn't mean you should suddenly feel totally calm and at ease, but it does mean that your nervous system is aware that there's no imminent threat in this moment. So we can give curiosity to the things that are painful or challenging. And maybe move the needle in an effective way. Called this workshop Dancing in the Flames. It's the name of a book by Marianne Woodman, who is a Jungian analyst. She was, maybe she still is. She passed away a few years ago. And she wrote a book called Dancing in the Flames, and it's about the transformation of feminine consciousness. And I'm going to use those words, feminine and masculine, as archetypes, not sex, not gender, but as archetypes from this Jungian tradition that, similar to in Ayurveda, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they have particular qualities. So I'm speaking feminine as particular qualities. If that doesn't work for you, you can think yin and yang for masculine. If those words are too distracting, that's, here's the alternative, yin and yang. And she's speaking about the dark goddess, the, again, force of transformation that comes through a destruction of one form or another. And when we are talking about the dark goddess in most traditions, but I know best and teach from the vantage of the Vedic goddess tradition. So the goddess Kali, the goddess of dark time, imminence, creation through destruction. It really is recognizing how to engage with death, chaos, with the understanding that we can harness that energy and move it in service of life. So death is inevitable. Destruction is inevitable. And when we relate to it as this unit, as this sequence, like yin yang, like Shiva Shakti, like masculine, feminine, they're, essentially in a cycle with one another, a perpetual dance, then it seems to me that we can harness that energy, the big activation of witnessing death and chaos, to channel our life force in a more effective way. So that's sort of like big picture. We're going to practice it in micro ways. I want to share this quote from Marianne Woodman. We know that we can change ourselves when we realize that we are not dependent on how we feel, nor on how others feel about us, nor on what the situation is around us. The values we hold, the choices we make within ourselves and for ourselves remain our prerogative. In most situations, if we begin to change, to do our own inner work, to accept our own inner darkness and work toward consciousness, the situation will change. We will begin to emanate a different energy, one that exudes a sense of autonomy and authenticity. Now, sometimes these quotes, particularly, the teachings around working with consciousness, it occurs to me a little bit like magical thinking, right? Like, oh, if I just like visualize the goddess, then all this war will end. That's not what is being expressed. That's not the point. I understand it to mean when we hold our consciousness more between these two poles, right? The coexistence of dark and light, the coexistence of tragedy and hope, then we're able to stay present and remain an active participant rather than completely collapse and go inert and just sort of like watch wide-eyed as all these catastrophes continue, or, become a destructive force ourselves, right? Rage being one of my favorite topics to teach on. The important learning of mine that I want to share is that in the brain, in the nervous system, rage is more an attempt to reestablish connection. So it can look violent, but it is this sort of last ditch survival-based response to isolation, disconnect, a severance from our experience of life. So just let yourself be curious about how these contradictions exist in you, to what degree you're able to hold contradictions. And if the topics that I'm naming, I'm referring a lot to present state of the world, which might be too activating to deal with today. You don't have to hold it all. I learn this way and I teach this way. Choose like a level 3 to 5 on a 10 scale of difficulty as we get more into, specific emotional content, your specific emotional content. The goddess Kali, and if the word goddess or this notion of like a deity doesn't work for you, just hear the words. Hear the words and let the images inform your experience of this, because that's really what it is. These deities are forces of nature, given form to make them easier to relate to. It's easier to relate to a face and a body and a name than a ephemeral, intangible experience. So for example, Kali is the imminent force of birth. If we think about, these deities as energy, birth cannot be stopped once it's started. And there's some violence there. There's some destruction there. This is from Sally Kempton's book, Awakening Shakti. Violence is part of the creative process. The energy that pushes the baby out of the womb in a process that is bloody and full of the threat of death is full of creative violence. Of course, in our time, we employ drugs and surgical knives to civilize the process, to make it more convenient, and often to save the lives of mothers and children. But in the essential truth of the body, the process officially belongs to Kali. And for many women, it offers the first great recognition that there is a place where the human ego has to get out of the way. How do we meet this experience of our ego having to fall away and give rise to something more essential? We have to be able to connect to something more eternal than our ego, which is largely our thinking function, which is where most of us are completely entrapped. So what's the alternative? Well, in my understanding of the nervous system, which is based largely in somatic experiencing, the thinking function is one of 5 ways that the nervous system expresses itself and changes. So you can think of these things I'm about to name as channels, and they're channels of engagement that we can participate in. The acronym is TIMES, and this is one, if you're going to study to be a somatic experiencing practitioner, the acronym is different, but this one is a little more user-friendly. So TIMES stands for thinking, image, or imagination, and I'm going to put this in the chat so you can see it, if that's helpful. Movement, emotion, and sensation. Most of us exist 90% of our life in the thinking channel. And what's important to understand is that thinking is essential. Thinking is a channel through which the nervous system expresses itself and takes in information in order to change and adapt. That's healthy. We want that, but we don't want to only think, because without sensation, without emotion, without knowing how to move our bodies, without access to full range of motion, I just learned a shit ton from a friend's partner. I won't name any names, but someone in this group. Their partner taught this incredible movement practice, and it like blew my mind and my nervous system wide open in the best way. So full range of motion also contributes to how safe or not we feel. Knowing that we can move big energy through our bodies and not collapse or die is really important. Many of you know my teacher, Kimberly Ann Johnson, and this notion of women needing to cultivate healthy aggression to fortify the way that we move through the world and transform our own victim stories is critical practice. But then again, there's this dance, the dance of the opposites in all of these channels. We can think too much, or we can totally check out. We can move in ways that are inefficient or, adjacent to dissociation. I think you can dissociate through movement. I think a lot of people do. We can be entrenched in our emotions, or we can be completely cut off from them. So we're trying to find a balance here between each of these 5 channels and in how they express. And we're just going to play a little bit with some of these features today. One last thing that I want to say is a specific point I'd like to make, and for you to maybe write down or hold in your consciousness. The difference between expression and explanation. When we're entrenched in the thinking function, we're really only able to explain ourselves. And when we're explaining ourselves, we're also putting ourselves at the mercy of the other person. My explanation is based on you understanding and validating me. With expression, I just need to be witnessed. It's so much more personal, true, powerful, self-affirming, and incredibly vulnerable, but ultimately, I think strengthening. And before we move into practice, I would just like to make space for any comments, questions. It might be a question that I say we'll do it later, but if it's something I can answer now, I'd love to do that. I'd also just love to hear some voices. So if you're feeling up to sharing or asking a question, please do.
Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
It's Nika. Hi. Sorry, I just jumped in. I really appreciate what you just in everything, but particularly this last part about the difference between explanation and expression.
Yeah.
And I was trying to write some of it down, but I could you just say it again for me? My
Hopefully,
processing needs repetition. It doesn't have
the
to be
good
exactly
news,
the same.
the good news, Nika,
Mhm.
is that we're recording this. So even if you do want the
Oh,
exact thing I said, but I will just offer
thanks.
again a
Okay.
simple repeat of the basic concepts. When we're
Mhm.
explaining ourselves, we're dependent on the other person's validation
Mhm.
and comprehension.
Mhm.
So our whole
Mhm.
truth is up for discussion. It's very
Mhm.
disempowering.
Mhm.
And in
Mhm.
expression, it's just about witnessing. Do you see me? Do you hear me? And that is also really vulnerable, but it's more about this is
Mhm.
my truth. I own it. I'm willing to share it with you. And I
Mhm.
just need you to see me and hear me. And for women, I think for
Mhm.
everyone, I teach women. I think that is a life altering experience to be seen and heard without having to explain ourselves. And it's something that I found in my work with women is actually very difficult for women to do because the risk feels so great. Like, I don't know if I'll survive one more person not seeing me and not hearing me,
Yeah.
which is where I think maternal rage comes from, female rage. Like, it's, like I said, a last ditch effort to establish connection.
You.
Margot.
That's helpful.
Can you say what the sensation channel is?
Oh, yes. Sensation is purely that internal visceral experience. So, sensing your body against the pillow, sensing your head resting on the floor if you're Katie. We all have, I think, a cursory, superficial experience of sensation. And then with time and practice, we can cultivate, like, and I'm speaking purely from my own body. I recognize, like, I didn't have a felt experience of my uterus or my ovaries until I was like 35 years old. Some people like feel every time they ovulate and know which side, and I think that's incredible. I think, there's pluses and minuses to being so sensitive in the sensation channel, but it also is about locating where you are in time and space. And when you don't have that function online, everything is like an onslaught to your system. You're hyper receptive to, it's like not having a layer of skin, right? That's a boundary. And that's where we get a lot of our sensations. So if you don't have a felt sense of where you end and the world outside you begins, everything is like a direct attack on your body, on your being, which looks like Summer has a lot of experience with.
I was gonna share that just within the first like couple minutes of you talking, my brain was like going crazy with all these like creative thoughts about like, death and rebirth, because that's what you were talking about, like old things need to die. And I'm also like a Scorpio, so that's my whole life. But just the importance of like any guided anything, because I've been so isolated for so long and I
Yeah.
haven't been wanting to practice anything because I can't commit because I'm like a toenail in, like, is my level of commitment. But just like it has been so good for my brain already, just like the first couple minutes. And I didn't realize I was like missing that. So I wanted to share that. And it's also just right? Like I don't need to talk to you every single day. Like I could put on like a guided meditation, and I know that that will trigger the same like
Mm.
curiosity for my brain. So I just wanted to share that and say thank you.
We could talk every day.
I would love that.
Hey, Summer, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing that. And for, I already have the theme for my next class planned based on you sharing. So thanks so much.
Okay, one more thing. So I know you've been like I don't want to say rebooting, but with all your photography stuff and how you're just rolling out all these new courses, I see them and I see all your free offerings, and I'm just so scared to participate because I know you're going to crack me wide open. And I'm like nervous about the recoil, right? Because I
Mhm.
can't like break down and then not be put back together and then
Totally.
be a stay-at-home mom. So,
Let
and
me
it's
pause you
nothing
there
that
right
has to
there,
do with
Summer,
you.
because
Yeah.
this is important for everybody. This is also why I say, like, pick your level 3 intensity to work at in this, half an hour left that we have together. And that's where, having someone that you can count on to be that mirror and also container for your process is really important. And when you don't have that regularly, then it really is up to you tuning into what the boundaries are. Like, what is, and this is also what we're practicing. Where can I go and reliably come back? Because that is explicitly the definition of resilience. Where can I go and declare my limit so that I can reliably come back to what is roughly center? And if you're like, bitch, I haven't been in center since the day I was born, I'm like, well, you're in the right place. I got you. We're here together. I want to get Katie's question and then I'd like to move into our practice. So if you have something, please feel free to write it down and we'll do it after the practice. Hi, Katie.
Hey, yeah, I'm definitely someone who tends towards explanation, even if it's just like to myself. Like I want to know like why did this happen or why am I feeling like this? And
Yeah.
I guess when I notice I'm doing that, what are some ways I could start to like shift more to expressing it and experiencing it instead of just like living up here and wanting the answers?
We're about to do that practice.
Cool.
We're
I thought that
about to
might
do
be the
that
case.
practice, but also I can't overemphasize the value of having a sense of humor about your shit and not putting, whatever challenge you've identified as the reason why your life isn't perfect up on a pedestal. And once I get that eradicated, everything will be fine. That doesn't exist. That's not a thing. And that's completely counterproductive for somatic work. If we want to repattern the nervous system, your nervous system has to have a baseline level of safety. So if there's someone constantly, the hypothetical critic in your head who's like constantly standing watch and wagging their finger and checking the list, you're not going to get very far. You're going to recoil into that little child terror, self-flagellating place. So if you can find any amount of humor toward yourself, love, compassion toward yourself, like, whoop, wow, we're really in it again. That pause right there is already a shift away from the pathology of overthinking and over-explaining. That I can't overemphasize the value long-term of the tiniest shifts of attitude, of energy, of physiology. It's tiny. Yeah. And yeah, Allison, thanks for using those specific words. Like, let's just use this as an example because this is where I'm coming from today. Like, how deep into the reality of our world right now can I go and reliably come back to the place from which I nurture relationship, feed my children, express through my passion projects? Like, we really cannot afford to lose ourselves in the chaos. And that's what enables a more powerful expression, is to have a clear container. I know where I end. I know what my limits are. There's this great saying by Betty Martin, who's a sex educator. What makes you generous is having a limit. So knowing where the stopping point is so that you can return back to center is critical. We're going a little bit all over the place because this is such This is such an entry point. It's such a portal, isn't it? But let's get to practice. Yes. And Kelly, I see you in the chat, and I really love those words as well. So if you don't already, I'd love for you to have a journal and a pen, or a piece of paper and a pen, or, you know, whatever allows you to write, that isn't digital. It will be helpful if you can write. And especially if you're, you know, depending on the degree to which you want to move energy through your body, the writing might be the place where you move more. And so have access to that outlet. We are going to move our bodies and move to some music today. I use the word dance. If that freaks you out or you're like, I don't dance, I'm sorry, then move your body based on, you know, the practice, the exercise, and the prompt that I give you. And then just notice how it is for you in this moment, your relationship to the screen, your relationship to the chair or the support that you have, your relationship to your space. You might take your eyes and just move them around where the ceiling meets the wall again, or simply allow your eyes to scan your space to notice what is what. What's the light doing? What are the textures doing? The colors, etc. This is our baseline. The baseline is the fact of the present moment, where you are in time and space. So if at any point the interior experience gets to be too much, remember where you are in time and space. Open your eyes, pull back from the practice, find your container, your vessel, and know what your limit is. I can't tell you what your limit is. And then when you're ready, place one or both hands on your body, anywhere along your torso where it feels good. There may be some emotional quality that's really up for you, or was stirred by the invitation to this class, or has been stirred by our conversation. An emotion that's challenging for you. Maybe it's grief, maybe it's anger, maybe it's actually ease, right? What are the emotions provoked by too much ease? And please work with this, again, a 3 to 5 on a 10 scale of intensity. So if this initial emotion is over at like an 8, shift for today's purposes of practice. And track how this emotion exists in your body on a visceral level. Notice sensations. They might be subtle, they might be very obvious. You might describe them internally for yourself. Fuzzy, sharp, slick, thick. What is your sensation channel doing right now? And then from that, do any images arise? Like a metaphor for what you're experiencing internally. If an image doesn't spontaneously arrive, move into that curiosity. What is an image that correlates with my emotional experience, or how I experience this particular emotion today? How does this emotion move? Maybe that's part of the image too. How does this emotion want to be expressed? Is it a volcano erupting? Is it a lion roaring? What is your sense of how this emotion wants to be expressed? And again, stay with that image, stay with your body. I'm going to play a couple songs for us, and these may be inspiration to you. They may facilitate your movement practice. You might crank down the volume and just move from an intuitive place. But before you worry about moving, before you sort of plan your first steps, just allow yourself to connect again deeply to your internal experience, the image, and through your movement, see if you can enable movement of that particular quality of energy and emotion without forming it, right? Without trying to make it something that it's not. Feel free to turn your camera off or just move away from the screen. Also, understand that no one's watching you because they're in their own movement practice. We'll play a couple songs.
Hey, Stacy, is there supposed to be music on?
As we move into these last couple of minutes, just notice if there's any way that you've been holding back and where you can make more room for expression through your body. Maybe in making a little bit of sound or changing your breath. Is there any part of your body that hasn't yet been part of this expression that could? Allow yourself a moment of rest, stilling your body more or less. Bring your hands to your torso again. Going to move into a writing practice where the invitation is to use your non-dominant hand, the hand that you do not normally write with. And before you start, before you put pen to paper, please take a moment to drop in again to your body, to this experience of your challenging emotions, the edge of discomfort, facing the aliveness, the truth inside your body. And calling in this energetic signature of Kali, the force that strips away everything that is not the truth. Often these difficult emotions can serve a similar purpose. You might ask yourself, what do you have to teach me? And then we're going to write for about 4 minutes with the opposite hand. Stream of consciousness writing. It should be awkward. It might be frustrating. Funnel all of that energy into your writing. What do you have to teach me? And write from that place. Get curious about what happens in between the emotion intensifying or an emotion coming up in response to this writing and what you do next. If you can just push the pause button for a moment, notice your body. Notice if there are any images. Let your writing come from that place rather than an explanation of what you feel. We'll start to finish up what you're writing if you're in the middle of a sentence or something else you want to jot down. And make your way back to the group. Notice what it's like to include the group and your present moment reality in the experience you just had. You can hold both. And if you're needing something else, like not coming back to the group or a little more movement, please listen to that. Thanks for riding with me across that technical glitch. Those of you who alerted me to no sound, thank you very much. So we'll spend our last few minutes with the option to share. If you would like to express anything about your experience, go ahead, Kelly. You can also use the chat if you're not feeling like coming off mute today.
Good morning. Thank you, first of all, for the class and the container. I think, well, there I said it, I think.
Yeah.
I, did the experience and was with it. And I feel like when I was writing at the end, like the concept is I'm not clear about where my responsibilities end or begin and where other people, other beings begin. And, so this was
Yeah.
sort of what was happening for me. The image was a roller coaster and getting too close and getting further away. But I still, even after all of that movement and embodiment in different ways, I still feel very confused and fuzzy. Because even though I can articulate my body and movement and my hands and writing, I still can't identify the emotion. And then I'm wondering, is that me just trying to explain this thing that doesn't need words? And weren't we just talking about this? So anyway, I wonder about that.
Thank you, Kelly, for that question. I'm going to get to it. If you want to stay with me a little bit, we'll get into it more specifically. I just want to give the opportunity for folks if they want to share anything about their experience, and then I'll move into the Q&A because that's really important, Kelly. So I will get there. Rachel?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool experience. I think the visualization, the feeling into the visualization, I guess what's going on was the ease really resonated with me from that, what you mentioned of like having a little bit of resistance to ease, and it felt very like I felt just this hesitancy in my body, and like the visual came up of you know, like sort of moving forward, but not really, kind of like moving forward, moving back, moving forward, moving back. And then like kind of like, I don't know if anyone's ever like cliff jumped like into a lake or something. Like how you feel before you're about to jump into like the lake. That kind of like, I'm about to do this, but I don't know if I want to. And so that was kind of what was coming up for me in the visualizations with ease. And I also thought the writing exercise was interesting because, I mean, it's different to write with your non-dominant hand. And then as I was writing, like my other hand was like like getting more tense. And then I was writing loosen your grip. And then I could tell my breath was like holding. And so I was just writing exhale my breath. And so it did bring a lot more awareness to what was going on in my body. Because you have to, I don't know if it's you're writing slower. Um, and I don't know if that connected with the ease that I was working with and like slowing down. And yeah, so yeah, that was it.
Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, I love the non-dominant hand writing practice is one that I learned from Sally Kempton. I really highly recommend this book. It's called Awakening Shakti. You know, well, I can give a whole spiel about it in a moment. I do recommend that book, full stop. And I would just like to say thank you to everyone. I want to create a clear end for those of you who maybe have to go. Please be in touch with me. Let me know how your experience was. If you can't stay for the Q&A, we'll go about 15 minutes. And keep your ears and eyes open for what's next. Next classes, both like bigger commitment and free classes like this. I'll be doing more through the summer. So if you need to go, I love you. And I can't wait to see you again. If you want to stay and dive into some questions, let's do it. I'm going to go back to Kelly's question. And Rachel said something that also reminded me of what I'd like to speak to Kelly's question about, you know, I'm still left. I don't know what I feel. I don't know what the emotion is. So that in and of itself is not a bad place to be. Part of the practice is to notice what is arising, like, oh, there's numbness in my back from the middle of my spine down. That's interesting. And there might be a feeling of almost, you know, it could go along a spectrum from like, that's interesting, to terror about the fact that I can't feel this chunk of my body. So to whatever degree you are working with a charge, you want to orient yourself to the fact of what's solid, right? I heard you name a couple of things that came through clearly. I had access to movement. My body's online today. And move your attention between those two realities. Holding the tension of the opposites is the practice. But I would also say, in whatever way the tangible grounds you, stay with that awareness. Like, let yourself really sink in there until it saturates you before you go to the place that kind of terrifies you. Right? We can only go as deep into the challenges as our what life rope, whatever, is long. Like I just have the image always, some of you have heard me use this metaphor before or example. In The Princess Bride, when they're in the fire swamp and he jumps into the quicksand. The only reason he can safely do that and reliably rescue his love is because he's got this big long vine that he's tied to himself. The length of that vine determines how deep he can go. The strength of your resources and your experience of the walls are standing, I am safe, my butt is in a chair, I am breathing. To the degree that you can feel that is the degree to which you can safely experience these other emotions and reliably come back to your center. We're not trying to just like whip ourselves up continuously. And for a lot of us, and Rachel alluded to this a little bit, for a lot of us, like learning how to spend a little more time in full presence of what's not wrong is actually edgy fucking work. Because our lives have necessitated being fixated on where's the next threat coming from. So if that resonates for you, like this is really important. Staring at the wall just to feel a little bit of safety or calm is therapeutic practice. To hold that in your awareness in your body for just a bit longer, what's not wrong, is really powerful stuff. I would love to hear from somebody else if there's questions specifically about your experience or something more general. And again, you can use the chat or your voice. Go ahead, Summer.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I did keep it at like a 5, so I was proud. When you first put the music on, I don't think I was listening to the instructions. And let me know if you can't hear me.
Your volume is
but
or the sound quality is a little funky.
It's because of the headphones. So I put it on speaker now. Can you hear me?
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so much better.
So I wasn't listening to the instructions, so I started writing at the beginning. And I wrote this like story about like it had to do with the body awareness. And I did have a lot of numbness like in my center. And so I wrote this story about like a sleeping bear that I don't want to wake up. And she eats all the things that are too much to handle. And I just work around her. And she grows inside because the things never go away. Like she just keeps them inside. And something she eats more than once, like every year or every month or every day or every hour. And then I was like, oh, okay, we're supposed to be moving. So I stopped writing. And then you prompted the writing with the opposite hand. And one, I was like surprised with how well, like not pretty, but just my hand can write legibly. But I started crying because I was like, oh my God, it looks like a little kid's writing. And I was just like, it was like, what do you have to teach me? And it was like, you are a little girl. Like, I am a little girl. And so I started crying and I was just like, I wrote, these things and the ways that I'm being like are not me. And I have just been taught to be a different way that is like completely not myself. And then, but I can't help but like ooze into everything that I touch. So that's what I have written in my like little kid handwriting. It's
so good. Yeah. Summer, I'm really struck by the bear image.
Yeah.
And like in combination with this little girl, my kids have this book called Evergreen. And it's this little teeny tiny squirrel who has to like brave the dangers of the forest to take soup that's packaged in a tiny acorn to her Granny Oak. And Granny Oak is a giant fucking grizzly bear. So like the squirrel crawls up onto Granny Oak's chest and like dumps the little soup from the acorn into Granny Oak's mouth. It's the cutest thing ever. And it's all about Evergreen facing her fears and building courage. So that popped into my head when you were talking. And there's something, maybe a worthwhile writing or visualization practice, turning toward that bear and asking her what she really needs.
Have you seen the movie New Mutants?
No.
It's like a X-Men spinoff, and the main character, she's like native, and she grows up with this like parable that there's 2 bears inside you. Not good or bad, but like a scared or brave. And it's like, which one do you feed the most?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's great. That's a
throughout the
great,
movie, like one gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's what I thought of when I was writing the story. So I'm
yeah,
gonna
that's
watch that,
great.
but I am writing down all the books that you're talking about.
Good. Thanks, Summer. Anybody else? Have a few more minutes. Questions, thoughts?
I have a question.
Yes.
Unless I am being physically contained in a space with one other human being, as soon as I start trying to do anything like this, I just compulsively check my email. I did it today. I have like so much shame that that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it feels so like I have made a choice that I don't understand why I can not just make a different choice.
Mm, yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I know exactly what that is. Well, I know exactly what that is in my own body. The most significant thing you can do instead of, again, trying to like understand it and stop it from here, which is arguably like the most restricted channel of the 5, you know, because our thinking when it's disconnected from the body is really only expressing everything we've internalized from outside ourselves. Your thinking function is about making meaning of the things you have viscerally experienced. So when our thinking is disconnected from our body, from our sensation, from our emotions, it's really just a regurgitation of everything that the world has taught you and told you.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. But then this place of like meeting the impulse with a pause, which can be 1 second long. It could be 3 breaths long, and not holding the stance of, I have to stop this. I'm not allowed to do this, because we, you know, that's not helpful, but just meeting that impulse with curiosity. What is this in my body? Is there like, you know, does it feel like a volcanic eruption? Does it feel like something else? That's the place to start. And if you need to check your email, check your email. But then there's also this, you know, what your nervous system is expressing is a flight response. This is too much. I need to get out of here. So it could be just slowing down what you're doing and being very deliberate about moving your feet or turning your body away from the camera or the teacher or the prompt or whatever, giving your nervous system permission to go away to the bathroom, to get a sip of water and try again. And if it's still too much, it's too much. But like you're doing a tremendous amount of work by just pausing a little bit, by taking, you know, it's like a toddler screaming. It's like, let me just meet your energy and hold space for it. Give permission for you to exist as you are. And then often that really changes a lot versus the stance of like, God, you're such a fuck up. Why are you doing this again?
Okay. Thank you.
Is that helpful?
It's very helpful. I think that like the trick I play on myself in my head is like I wouldn't go look at like Instagram, but if it's like a work email, I'm like, this is
Yes. Then it's okay.
productive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank you.
Yes, you've got good company in this group. Yeah, we've got 2 more minutes. I would love to support you if there's anything else I can offer. If you would just like to speak words aloud and be witnessed, there's space for that. It's so nice to be with you all, especially those of you I haven't seen or gotten to connect with in quite a while. Kelly, please continue sending me memes. I love them so much. It is a love language, and I feel deeply seen. I know.
I want to share that I think I've come to the realization that in order for my baby daddy to practice self-preservation, I have to go to a 1-year-old's birthday with both of my kids by myself.
How are you holding the weight of that?
It just hit me. It just dawned on me, so it hasn't actually hit me yet. I'm definitely going to lower my expectations, but I'm also going to have to like grieve that we can't, I like, even though I can force him to do things that I think are right and appropriate and his duty, it's not going to be good for us in the long term. So thank you for hearing that.
You're welcome. I really loved being with you all, and I love getting to share this and being this conversation with women I really respect. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
If
Stacey.
you need anything, please let me know.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.